Welcome again to Around the Block with Circular. We're here with 3 guests this time, so it's going to be quite a conversation. Our goal is to talk about Web3 startups in the blockchain universe, with trends, challenges, opportunities, and mostly we're exploring how these founders that are here with us today are overcoming regulatory challenges, all the technical issues that we've been talking about here in this forum. But ultimately our goal is to look for trends and what the investors benefit from, but also what startups and the Web3 ecosystem needs to do to take advantage of these growth opportunities, right? So we have today with us, we have Gianluca De Novi. He is the Circular founder, CEO, and CTO. So thanks for coming back. John O'Keefe hasn't been here before. He's a co-founder and CEO of Cubic Labs. And Macharia, how do you pronounce your last name?
Macharia Waroinge.
The coolest name today is Macharia, president of Actuate Foundation. So let's just kick right into it. Thanks for coming in today for YouTube Live. We are really welcoming you back. You've been on the road a lot. Remind people what you're doing here and what they can expect from Circular and what's happening with Around the Block. What's going on around the block at Circular?
Oh, well, we're trying just to set up a good format, a good podcast to try to disseminate a bit of good content and help educating whoever wants to join the DeSci and decentralized healthcare verticals for Web3. And it doesn't matter if you're an investor, if you are simply curious, if you are a developer, whatever is your role, we're trying to just have a box with a lot of very good content and with guests that can come and bring their experiences to share with you.
So John, tell us about Cubic Labs.
Sure. Cubic Labs is a tax-exempt organization. We primarily focus on economic development, and how we do that is through driving ecosystem and technology development in the emerging technology space. We were set up in 2019. And our first vertical we started working in was distributed ledger technology, or blockchain.
You jumped right into it.
Yeah.
So you have the Boston Blockchain Week, and you have an incubator, an accelerator, south of Boston, Quincy.
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's going great. We started off looking for a community of people we thought in the emerging technology space. We ran a competition. We got 70 or 80 applicants that kind of proved out that, okay, there's appetite for this and there's a community of people that need support, and we didn't really want to compete with any more traditional incubators or accelerators, and ultimately we kind of built that competition into a $5 million first of a kind public-private blockchain R&D facility. Then it's been really cool. We've had some first of a kind projects in the US. We've had just huge amount of different founders and different types of blockchain related technology come true. So it's been fairly exciting, and we're excited to see what the next.
So you have about a dozen
brings.
now that have been approved, and they're in this cohort.
Yeah, we've actually probably had 40 or 50 companies go through Cubic, but as we've dialed in what specifically we're looking for, we currently are offering a 10 to 20 member cohort that's specifically blockchain focused.
Excellent. So that brings you back to Macharia and your mission to support companies similar to this. Tell us a little bit about Accentuate. Actuate, excuse me.
Is Actuate. Actuate, our job is
Accentuate's not a bad word either, though.
Accentuate. Yeah, but before we can accentuate, you have to actuate. It's the beginning.
Yes.
It's,
Perfect.
I call it the genesis moment. So Actuate is that genesis moment for translating the knowledge that is harbored on people in Africa into commercial products and services. And the commercial products and services, we focus on these services that are in biomedicine, making medical devices, or even making biomedical products like pharmaceutical products. That translation of knowledge from the tacit dimension through explicit products, then we commercialize them into commercial services. Now, in order for that to happen, we have to work with university partners throughout the African continent. We have several university partners we are working with to help now take the knowledge from the tacit dimension all the way into commercial products, and then use those knowledge for the healthcare system. for building health access. That means how do we make medical devices, how do we make medicine, even medical supplies, and distribute them through the health care system to the consumers of care using the blockchain. That's how we use the blockchain.
So,
Translation
so
side.
perfect. That's a great setup, because the mission statement of Circular is building better tools to build a better internet. How is it that you've invited Machari here to take advantage of these tools? What is your vision for that?
Well, I mean, our mission is exactly that, but if you go a little bit deeper, is really focused on the science and the healthcare, which I think are the main focus of the foundation. So we are an infrastructure project, so we want to be the one providing the infrastructure for their applications to be built on, but most importantly, to be already up to date with all the best standards and certification of the data, of the results, and all the different steps. So we are not very interested in supporting, the next token, but we are really into the data science application of the blockchain. And I think that what they're doing is remarkable, and we definitely want to be part of it and ready to support them.
What new trends are shaping the market right now that these guys can benefit from your standpoint?
I mean, I think we said this many times now in different episodes. COVID has been a very important historical moment, because as signed the decline of the trust toward the healthcare institutions and companies and businesses. So, should we invest in rebuilding that trust, or should we invest in rebuilding a new paradigm? And my answer is that we should invest in a new paradigm that is not based on trust. I don't buy from this or that company because I trust this or that company, because we learned that doesn't work. I need to build new tools so that there is decentralization as a way to audit if each one of the stakeholders are doing the things that they are supposed to do and in the best interest of people.
So we're driven, though, by commercialization, what Machari was talking about, right? It's the value proposition, your enterprise API that we were talking about. We're not just trying to change things for the sake of change, we're trying to make the systems better, right?
Again, I don't need to have the FDA making an appointment with a pharmaceutical company and say, "Oh, I'll see you in 3 months to audit and see if you did your job in the right way." I want the FDA to turn on the computer and be able to do that auditing in real time.
Yeah.
That is, I think, is the new paradigm. Right. And I need people to be able to audit themselves, some of the products, some of the practices. And between the blockchain and the AI, now the AI is a translator that goes from scientific language to simple language, for example. You can really enable anyone to verify these things. All these conspiracy theories that are around, they're not a funny thing, but they are the symptoms that there is no more trust. That's what it is. So I don't want to be I don't want to discuss about who's right, who's wrong. I want to say, hey, is there a way to make this thing work so that I have to rely on tools rather than on trust?
So when you go back to the beginning of Cubic Labs and you got involved with decentralized distributed ledger technology, you said, what was motivating that? Was it a trust element? Was it an efficiency element?
Well, as I mentioned, we were interested in the emerging technology space, and I had mentioned that we were looking for a technology group that needed a home. But beyond that, also, we looked at the space, and we looked at the crypto space, and we identified blockchain as a more attractive area for us to focus on, because it's much more utilitarian. While crypto sat upon blockchain, there was a lot of other use cases for blockchain we felt was more sustainable as a company for us, or enterprise to go after. Beyond the utility of it, we also saw some of the negative connotations around the crypto space, and as a group that regularly partners with public, private, academic you know, that's something that, and I know we're going to talk about the regulatory landscape, but that's something we had to look at too,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter what your personal opinions are on it. If someone's going to come after you for investing in something or getting involved with something, it's not a headache you want it to go near either. And blockchain to us is fairly boring, actually. It's like it's an underlying technology that offers a lot of operational benefits and also some kind of has societal implications around trust, which I think are really important.
Is that the same way you got involved with blockchain, for that, not just the efficiency of it, but for the trust, for the ability to, as you were saying earlier, commercialize, right? And you can
Yeah. Yes, precisely. Blockchain is really powerful. New paradigm, as Dr. Novi has said, new paradigm. This new paradigm in economics that was never seen before, has never been seen, because this new paradigm is inclusive instead of exclusive. Decentralized finance with people making decentralized decisions everywhere in the world. And I can say that that problem of drug discovery, it takes about $3 billion to get a molecule to be approved by the FDA. From research to a molecule or to a tablet that you can use,
Yeah.
which is called from the bench to bedside, $3 billion. Who can afford that? People in developing countries can afford that. Besides that, that process is highly centralized. See? So that excludes a lot of people with knowledge to discover new products and put them in the market because of the price tag alone. For a biomedical device, like to use, costs about $700 million. So the same thing. So it's a little cheaper than to make drugs, to make biomedical devices, but it's not cheap anyway. In any case, that work of waiting for the FDA to make a decision is extremely grueling. It also takes about 10 years to get a product from bench to bedside. The blockchain overthrows all that. Because of that, first of all, makes it decentralized. People can make decisions in any university, anywhere in the world. Any research organization can now have the power to compose their knowledge and take it to the market. And then we're not saying that let's do away with the FDA, but then let us decentralize that. The blockchain is able to do that. And actually, we don't have to build the blockchain because Dinovi has built it already. We just have to use the platform, but use it judiciously in Africa for decentralizing that phenomena of discovery process, such that we're now able to make medical devices, we're now able to make drugs, and then we are also able to award tokens, blockchain crypto tokens, to people who are doing that work, incentivize
as compensation and to build the economy around it.
Yeah.
So John, where's your head around that?
Well, let me just, I think there's something interesting there, and even tying back to Jean-Luc's comments. So the concept of trust, since November we've had maybe 200-300 different applications for startups, for different blockchain startups, and one of the things I'm very cognizant of is, there's a lot of idealism in this space. New technologies, new hope. What's their application to society and for some of these issues. But you also touched on it earlier. There has to be a commercial element, and one of the things I try hard to do is to match the ideology with, is there a commercial element? And I'd use the analogy of maybe of the press. Everyone wants to read the truth. We don't want to pay for it. We don't want to pay the subscription. Well, it's the same thing as like, are people willing to pay for
You're investing in these things. Yeah.
So understanding is there commercial viability is a real important part of what we do. And if you also consider, I often think of, I don't know where I heard it, but a new product has got to be 10 times better than an old one to pull people away from it.
Yeah.
Well, you just got to be sure, and this is just speaking from a Cubic Labs perspective, when we give out grants to startups, that their hope for this new space and the idealism is matched with a very strong degree of commercial sophistication and understanding. This is if we're here in the US and it's capitalism, and you have to be able to sell it, and someone's got to make money of it somewhere for it to actually reach a critical tipping point and reach mass adoption. And that you strip out an awful lot of applications that way, just because I'm like, yes, you're right, and maybe that's the way things should be, but the de facto end of the day is like, but it has to be something that we think will survive the many obstacles coming its way, and it has to have real commercial viability.
So that's the word, survival, right? You're talking about sustainable tool sets. It's not just seeing a big, huge opportunity, a lot of waste in an industry, and how can you fix it? You have to build the tools so they can be regulated, right? They're compliant, but also sustainable. Is that how you're building some of these tools?
I mean, what is an example? When I started building Circular, I thought, we were in the middle of COVID, and I said, now that they fast-tracked the vaccines, after COVID, there would be chaos. And that was exactly what happened. Actually, I was wrong in my prediction, because I thought we will start needing these kind of tools probably in 2 to 3 years from where we are right now, and instead regulation is going in the direction 2025. GCP 2025 already said you need to certify the data of the patient around the world, not in one country. But what is important, that you have to build something that is sustainable but has a commercial value. The fact that I have an infrastructure that is offering these tools, while everybody's been thinking about tokens, I've been focusing on another vertical. I still have the tokens, but that is the beautiful narrative that I see. Today we are onboarding projects one after another. Why? Because they were looking for exactly what was missing in Web3, which was an infrastructure that is actually focused on that narrative. Tokens, fine, but you need to offer a bit more than that. And like I say to everybody that wants to invest or that wants to get involved with Circular, the first people that invested in Bitcoin, I will never stop saying this, did not invest for pump and dumps or because they were thinking about making money. They invested because they wanted that paradigm shift. That's why they invested.
Less selfish,
They
more
wanted
society.
to have the freedom, the decentralization, out of control. Okay, can we replicate these now in a different industry that is not finance, but is healthcare or is science? That was the big question. And I said, well, I can use that instrument. All I need to be able to do is to provide the right tools so that the compliance is going to be there by design and all the other pieces are going to be in place. And they are an example because he just told you, we needed something to do this. He already built it. That's what is happening with many other projects in this space.
Let's talk about your market though, right? They're paying $10 a month for their Safaricom phone from Vodafone, right? What kind of economy is there to commercialize? And how are you building in what Jean-Luc is talking about, which is this compliance by design, but also sustainable tool sets? Is that, are your vision longer term? Or
it's long term because I believe Africa is a citadel of mountains of dead capital. It's described by Hernando de Soto in his book, Mystery of Capital in 2000. He said why capitalism thrives in the West and fails everywhere else. Then he told us Africa is a citadel of dead capital. Dead capital means that people are working every day, but the work that they produce is not represented in the finance market. So even talking about commercial value of any project like this is not possible to count using the present day mathematics.
yeah.
And we have to think. See, for example, if I ask you, if somebody asked Google in 1998, what was the commercial value of the search engine? Google guys say, you don't know.
Yeah.
Commercial value. That's the whole point. That when we are at this beginning stages of any technology like that, it's very, very difficult to account for the commercial value. Yet Google today is one of the most valuable companies in the world. And this is what I see, the value that is in that dead capital in Africa itself. It's so much, it's immense. We just need to figure out how to turn that dead capital into live capital by translating the knowledge of the people that are in developing countries. That's what we are talking about. Translate that knowledge. What's the commercial value of that? We don't know yet, but it is a massive. So long as we translate it, and the blockchain is a technology for doing that.
So not only can you translate it, but you can also demonstrate it with blockchain.
Yes.
Right. Is that your point, that you're using something that you can point to and say, here's a benchmark and this is a change. This is a value proposition.
Precisely.
Okay.
Now how blockchain captures, I'm talking about capturing, comprehending the commercial value of something and encoding that value is, for example, say women today in Africa are outside the finance system. They are unbanked, almost all of them. About 80% of the women are unbanked in certain countries. In my country, in Kenya, it's about 60%. It doesn't mean women are not working, but you cannot find the value of the work that women produce in anybody's balance sheet. Okay? That doesn't mean they're not productive, or they have no commercial value that they're coming out. That value that people produce that is not in the balance sheet, now we're able to encode it in the blockchain, because every one of those women, let's say in every family, they have got a cell phone.
Right.
And if they have a cell phone, they can have a blockchain wallet, crypto wallet. And that means that we can now reach people who are outside the market.
So you can not only reach people outside the market, but you can also give attribution to what is actually happening.
Yes, and that is now encoded. I know you talk about 10 shillings, $10. It only takes $10 a whole month to encode that value. That's the power that we have, and it can even be cheaper to make it even more accessible.
So John, are you thinking about these kinds of forces on the companies that were in your cohort, not just legal issues, but economic issues, and how important, how much are you talking about those forces?
Well, I think you mentioned Hernando de Soto. I think the premise on that book, or one of the books, was that the recording of assets is one of the fundamental drivers of civilization itself, and that if you can't record everything starts from there. How do you record land? How do you record banking? And ultimately, I look at blockchain as the next step in how we record data. If we think about financial services, where we've typically been playing, if you were a trader 40, 50 years ago, you had a physical ledger, then you moved to a computer, then you moved to Excel, then you moved to the cloud, and this is to be the next evolution of that. Again, I mentioned underlying technology. When we look at companies who come to us, or startups who come to us, I mentioned, do they have the commercial ability or the idea? Do they have the idea, but do they have the team behind them? We specifically picked areas we felt were we can get the most bang for buck in, because we're also cognizant. Look, we give out investments, but it's not huge amounts of money. But what we can do really is we can build an infrastructure around it and around that startup. So if we look at blockchain, and we have some efforts in AI moving forward too, what we're actually doing is we're seeding them, but then we're providing them with a support structure, a mentorship, access to additional capital, and to do it in an ecosystem that encourages kind of that cross-pollination of ideas. I don't think we're taking on, we don't have any projects as vast in scope as what you're taking on, just by nature of the fact that we have to pick our bets, that we have probably 10 or 15 smaller projects at any given time.
But either way, it's cheaper and more nimble because of distributed ledger technology. So Gianluca, you're talking about sustainable tokenomics, right? Describe what that means and how that fits into this dialogue of cheaper access, but also more flexible access, right? Is that sustainable tokenomics?
Oh, well, I hope I was not going to have a question about tokenomics, but I'll answer anyway. I've been going through a million tokenomics at the right time when I had to work on the tokenomics of Circular. And I think I did my best to try to build a tokenomics that will not lead anyone reading to think about a scheme of pump and dump. We don't hype, we are not into that business. We are trying to build solid value based on the technology and the adoption of that technology. I think we are in the DeSci space right now the biggest project by adoption, not by market cap. And the reason is why? Because we don't care about the market cap expressed by a token, we care about the market cap expressed by a market.
Right.
And so the token is there. If the token value is going to go up or is going to go down, it's going to be a reflection of what's going to be the trust of people in what we are doing and the results we are bringing to the table, not on me going on X and say, buy, you're going to make money. No, that's not the way it works for me. But maybe because I'm not, of these new generations, but I hope that we can find a good common ground where there can be a bit of fun from the DeFi side while we are also doing something meaningful.
So
But
let's put that in this perspective, though. The value of what you're doing with the native token is to demonstrate a kind of a quality of control, a proof of the concept.
you know, I'm trying to do something to help people, so I'm not going to go mess with them through the token. If I'm
Right,
trying to build the
right.
technology to help, I'm not going to, from the other side, go to scam them. So
Yeah.
it's very that's
Yeah,
really that simple.
your incentive is to obviously make business
It's a
out of this.
pure utility.
Maybe a useful analogy is when the advent with Bitcoin, the idea and the intended use. I have a lot of guys say to me, "Oh, this is a new currency." I say, "Well, no, that's challenging." They say, "Why?" I say, "Well, because it's become a speculative asset. It's really going to hurt the adoption because as a currency, imagine just a business, you need currencies to stay relatively stable so that you can budget out and you know how much you're
Right,
going to spend. and
predictability in some
how
way,
much is a
yeah.
loaf of bread today and how much it's going to cost me tomorrow. And I think by focusing on the adoption and keeping it away from the speculative space, it does help it keep it on track to its intended use and not become just another something sucked into the vast speculatory asset management space in the US, which has hurt, I think, a lot of cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, so let's just nail that, because the value of that I was trying to get to with the CIRC is that is a secure value transfer, right? You're proving that you can do that. There's storage of these transactions, and you can monetize on your own. I mean, you're not relying on any other systems to do that.
I just need the companies like his to be able to have a medium to pay for transactions.
Yeah.
The real adoption, and I keep saying this, is not retail. It is indirectly retail, it's B2B. When the enterprises step in, they carry with them all their clients, which is the retail market. So that's where you have the real boom of a new technology, So as we climb through the mass adoption, you need to be ready and you need to have tools that enable a company, a business that can use the blockchain without to think about, a wallet and a token and the price of the token. So if you expect, the Mass General Brigham to think about that when they emit the certificate, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's too much.
So you need to be able to abstract that and create a different type of account that can somehow hide all the complexity of the DeFi and just make things predictable.
Right. So you now have the tool set you need, right?
Yes.
It's compliance by design. The user UX is there. You can put you can have wallets. How is this now allowing your dreams to come true, which is what you're doing? What are you doing with this stuff now?
So what we're doing with this stuff, first of all, the tokenomics is say to this relies on two principles we use in plumbing called faucets and sink.
Yeah.
A faucet is the one that distributes tokens. First of all, you mint the tokens, then you have to distribute them to the people. And now, traditionally, we have had things like airdrops, just massive distributing tokens to anyone. But now, instead of doing that, we have what's called, careful distribution into faucets, that we only issue tokens to those people who deserve, like the incentivized program we just talked about.
Right.
So then we have the sinks that are going to consume those tokens. That's what now would create balance. Now we're talking about the utility value of the token, is how are those tokens going to be used? Either people doing transactions, either paying for healthcare in Africa, or paying for knowledge for the research grants and stuff like that. And so we are building several things for that. Smart contracts for consuming the tokens that are going to come now. And I'm thinking when you go to the circular platform, that's what we're going to be doing, distributing throughout the entire continent. So then something he brought up a little bit about Hanan de Soto is tokenization of value. Now what we want to focus on is tokenization of the value in biomedicine, science, and the healthcare real estate, because in the outside healthcare, we have tokenization of real estate, of real world assets. And we're working on that to figure out how we tokenize the real assets in biomedicine and in healthcare, becoming now another sink.
So that's what John was talking about, though,
Yeah.
is predictability. A business is commercial because you kind of know what's going to happen. I think that's what you're talking about. You had some elements of predictability because of this new transaction system that you can point to,
Yes.
so people can invest in it, right? So how is investment going in what you're doing? Where are you getting where are you getting interest from people who want to take advantage of this predictability of commercialization?
Oh, because I tell you, first of all, in Africa, like Hernandez sort of said, we were outside money. We are like this quarters of finance system.
Yeah, yeah.
So the people who are interested in this are the people in Africa themselves, who have actually come to an awakening that, oh my goodness, we have been outside finance for the whole ever. Let's get onto finance, and that is where you're finding people coming in. Particularly when you talk
Let's
about
get what finance? Outer finance.
they have been outside
Yeah,
finance.
right. So is that an
That's
initiative?
what
That's why you're here.
That's Hernandez sort of was calling extra legal.
Yeah, right.
We were extra legal, outside money. So blockchain bring people inside money in the decentralized finance. And the biggest thing, like what Hernandez sort of was saying, the mystery of capital, the first mystery is, he called it the mystery of missing information.
Yeah.
Mystery of missing information.
Yeah.
And then he talked about the mystery of legal failure. So the lawyers are not helping us to build contracts that can break these contracts, like title deeds for houses and lands, into the information system. But now we have tokenization of title deeds, tokenization of all that, and so we are working on that as well through in the Architect Foundation, and throughout this 2025, seeing how we work with even government ministries, the Department of Land, Housing and Urban Development for tokenization of real estate, but also tokenization of the healthcare assets, tokenization of biomedical assets themselves. Yeah.
And just just one distinction there is when we talk about currency, you mentioned predictability, but when we talk about assets like this, we're really talking about proof of ownership, where sometimes none may have existed previously.
So we got two things going: ownership and distribution, right? It's part of this conversation is about
Correct.
awareness.
Imagine a patent that you can tokenize, and you can associate a token to the owner.
Yeah.
And that could be jurisdictional. So
We're talking tokenizing intellectual property.
yeah, you can say this
Yeah.
token represents Kenya, this one Nigeria, and whoever owns that token has the rights to use that IP in that country. That's another very good and comfortable way to manage a market that is very hard. Imagine the market for patents today, it's very tough. You have to go through specific firms, and it's very expensive when you can tokenize and really create a marketplace where you can.
This is very macro, though. I mean, these changes are happening not just slow, but they're complicated. I mean, are you looking at these macro movements in the marketplace so your cohort is taking advantage of them?
Well, they're macro movements, but they all happen from, I guess, micro initiatives. So, like, an example is we just did our Cubic member company just did a first of a kind municipal or blockchain-based municipal bond in the US, and that was pretty cool. And one of the thoughts behind it was, hey, first of all, is there a way to create a scenario where retail investors can get access to investments in their own backyard, projects they know maybe they can avail of some
That's
of
what you were just talking about, inside money.
They can avail of some of the tax exempt nature of some of those bonds and invest in things they know and they can see. Potentially, could we tokenize those coupons and maybe offset their city taxes? There's a lot of cool stuff to play with. But even that project, which was first of a kind, it took a year and a half to get done. And but like what you hope to see is that's just the first movement in a boulder downhill where maybe there's another one coming.
That kinetic energy was taken care of, and now you can.
And someone did it and got it off the ground. And now what you're looking at is, hey, we may be able to create a brand new marketplace for municipalities. We may be able to create financial opportunities for retail investors or constituents. We may be able to be much more efficient with how we use our taxpayer money in terms of the operational efficiencies, in terms of having single point of reconciliations, instantaneous settlement, reduce counterparty risk, much more efficient, disintermediating what currently works, better use taxpayer money. That all starts somewhere, and while it has a macro impact, where's ground zero for it?
Right.
And And we hope some of these projects will be ground zero.
It sounds like, though, just what you said in that string of levers that need to get pulled, each one has an incumbent that doesn't want it to happen. How are you dealing with pharmacies, right, for example, and they have systems that aren't your systems and you're bringing in another one? How do you handle that kind of acceptance and partnership with them?
Well, we don't deal with the pharmacies, so we actually are integrated in a network of pharmacies, but through an application that we don't develop. It's a third-party application, and it's actually a white label application, which means that there are other companies that distribute and manage that application for them. And through that application, we are right now in 8,000 different pharmacies in Italy, and we are seeing if we can also create the connections to bring the same paradigm here in US. And it's a very convenient paradigm because you are adding two different point of value to this kind of service. First of all, you can get tested directly into a pharmacy rather than go to a clinic. And today there is the technology and the right kind of medical devices so that you can literally go in the pharmacy, drive there or walk there and get a test without to go back and forth to the doctor, and then you can share the data with whoever you want because it's your data. And now that is the second point of value, which is I can decide what I want to do with my data. Right. And then at that point, there is a third point of value, which is I can also decide to sell that data. And how do I sell that data? Because there will be companies that will go scraping this kind of data and having a smart contract to purchase directly from the patient the data that now is not random data, it's certified data, which means high quality data. And if you're looking at the AI landscape right now, from the regulatory perspective, if you want to use AI for healthcare, for example, you have to make sure 200% that that data the AI has been trained on is not random data that has been created through another AI or has been faked or has been, I don't know, changed the timestamp just to buy data. You need to have data which is accompanied by an auditing trail so that you can always guarantee the quality of that data. That's the only way I know to be able to leverage AI in healthcare in a reliable way.
So AI needs blockchain or some other DLT to manage its exponential growth.
I think that's irony of the destiny. That's why they came out at the same time, pretty much.
all the blockchain investors got scared off, so they jumped on AI, and now they're coming back.
That's correct. I mean, if you need an LLM just like ChatGPT, you don't care about the certified data. I mean, that might be interesting just for a copyright reason, so that nobody can say, "Oh, you used my data." But if you want to use to diagnose, I don't know, cancer to a patient, I want to be very conscious that the data that the AI has been used to be trained was really high quality data.
Yeah.
For that kind of of application, real human data was not like something that you have no control on the quality.
Right.
Otherwise, becomes not reliable because the answer that the output of that AI is going to be connected to what has been used to train it.
So, John, aren't we talking about two different things? We have a market opportunity, almost as Gianluca says, it's like a marketing pitch for, hey, you get your own data, you can sell your own data, it's great. I want my MTV, right? It's exciting. But there's still this infrastructure that you have to kind of beat your way into and have use cases that work. How are you handling that friction at that point?
So the key word you use there, you talk about incumbents, and I'll address it from the financial services perspective, but you could talk about this in terms of in many different verticals across the US. You could talk about it in housing, about in India. There's so many different things where as the system evolves and things get set, there's very little appetite for new things that upset a status quo. So from a financial service perspective, we're not really talking about the politics of other different parties, but fundamentally, I feel strongly about this, that you can't have a situation where you're saying, we have this, and I'm talking specifically about banks, we have these old established companies, that must be protected at all costs at the expense of small startups that are looking to create a better situation and financial alternatives for just regular Joe Schmoes everywhere, frankly.
Right.
And it's bad enough. You can accept if it's business. If a large bank says, we're going to buy these, we're going to acquire these, we're going to take them out, that's fine. But where I see an issue is when they start leaning politically, and then you start to see small startups punished for innovating. I mean, that's essentially un-American.
Right.
You're saying, no, this is the status quo. We don't want any change to the system. This group of
This is
people-
how it works.
This is how it works. They're going to make a bunch of money. Sorry, bud, that's now illegal because we've decided it is. But it's not legally illegal. We're just going to rule by enforcement that it's illegal. That's so fundamentally wrong from an innovation or
Right,
entrepreneur.
right.
Like it's just. I mean,
It's not free enterprise.
it's not free
right,
enterprise,
right.
but it's keeping the foot down on the little guy,
Right.
and it's saying we don't want this system to be better for. Listen, I will go on such a rant about if I have to go down once a week to different branches to do different stuff.
Yeah.
And it's actually, what's funny is the bigger groups, and this is the second part of this conversation, is that they're strategically delaying stuff while they're investing furiously behind the scenes. All a small startup has is speed and nimbleness.
Yeah.
All the big institution has to do is, well, we are going to, we're going to slow this down. We're going to put $100 million of R&D into this in the background. We're going to keep our market share.
Just keep our lead.
Yeah, and the smaller guy, I know the smaller regional groups aren't doing that, but they're screwed anyway because since 2008, there's 50% less FDIC insured institutions anyway. So like if they're not innovating, they're done. So then what you're going into is a situation where we're all beholden to these big institutions, which essentially puts all the risk in a couple of buckets, and we lose that smaller, more local institution that people can know
And maybe more responsive.
more responsive,
Yeah.
which then puts you in, and this is not happening in just one industry, this is happening, there's a gap growing and this is happening across the board. And then when something bad happens, like 2008, and all that risk is squeezed into a couple of groups, everyone's in big trouble.
Yeah, the big tech trouble that we're talking about. But you're here for everybody, right? Circular is about the ecosystem, right? You're not saying no to the big corporations. You're not saying only yes to small, but you're designed to be ubiquitous and to be acceptable by all. How do you handle both sides? I mean, you're for everybody, right?
Surprise. That the surprise effect. I think nobody saw this coming. I think only that I'm a nerd, probably saw this coming. And then when I usually approach big enterprises, some names. So the first thing that they do is a nice laugh, and then when you then explain the advantages, they have an epiphany. And that's when they start coming up with MOUs and things. And I think that's pretty much what has been interesting and totally unexpected until now, because I thought would be, there's nothing. Healthcare is very hard to sell, especially if you are going Web3. I said it's very not sexy to sell, and instead
Infrastructure is not sexy.
I start having people on X that share their problem with healthcare. All their cases, all their stuff. Oh, I wish this was in my country, or wish. And instead, I'm discovering that it's absolutely the opposite. It's becoming like in 1 month and a half. We think we signed I don't know how many partnerships like.
Well, I don't know. I often think that that unsexy is sexy. Like when we talk, some of the startups we look at, like I mentioned, municipalities. Well, if we bring our products to a firm that has a huge budget, and let's say we go to a hedge fund with new piece tech, they already have all the new technology.
Right.
The bang for your buck that you can get by going to groups like that, and it might sound like fixed income where we were operating is boring. Well, that's where there's a lot of money to be made. And infrastructure might be boring, but there's a lot of value created by creating infrastructure that's more operationally efficient, that creates better outcomes for people. And it's from a commercial perspective, but it's from a user experience, it's from the people on the ground using it. So I mean, I think the smart guys like unsexy is the sexy when they're looking for returns on.
So huge opportunities for the 80% of women who are unbanked.
Yeah.
Right, and now you have an infrastructure that the question is, who knows what the good is going to come from? Well, we do know there's good. What kind of things are you looking for in the marketplace to point to and say, we're allowing that? I mean, do you have specific industries that you're fostering? Because infrastructure is one thing, but where are you applying it? Are you applying it to healthcare? Are you applying it to job growth or GDP or something like that.
So, okay, and let me first speak about the incumbents. When they are trying to hold on to what they have not understood the magnitude of the market. You see, the market is so huge. If only they could get it. Like we are saying, if we open up these people who are extra legal, which is the billions, they are not just hundreds of millions, billions of people, they get in the marketplace. Even the traditional finance system is going to benefit a whole lot more by getting, say, like women in the villages participating in the capital markets, which they're not allowed to do today. They're extra legal. So that is a very huge industry that's the brink of happening. But
that's not a blockchain problem. That's a government allowance, right? That's a law.
Yeah, so the politicians, they make such decisions up there in Washington, D.C., and of course in Nairobi. They have not understood. That's why we're inviting them to this summit so you can tell them, listen, guys, there's a much big opportunity in this missing information.
Instead of keeping it the same, allow innovation, right?
Allow innovation. Otherwise, they are the ones going to lose. You see what Kodak happened to Kodak, Eastman Kodak. When Eastman Kodak did not innovate into digital cameras, what happened?
Yeah.
Wiped. So
They're saving that film industry, though.
Yeah.
There's probably a big warehouse somewhere with a lot of film in it.
That's what they were doing. Yeah, let us hold on to the present, not knowing that the future is already here. So for the incumbent, that's my message to them. For you incumbents thinking you're holding on to something, it's already gone. Let's go to the future together.
Yeah, that's what Cubic Labs talks about. You know, we're looking at new opportunities, but you're also taking advantage of those incumbents. How do you handle something like a government bond thing and not freak people out so they want to participate?
Well, government bonds is easier because, you know, strategically, it's not the risk side of the market. It's not securities. It's again boring.
Yeah.
Fixed income.
Yeah.
And you're not changing the nature of the asset, you're just changing the underlying infrastructure. And that gets a lot less attention. Not that there's anything to hide, but it's more, no one cares about the tech really.
Right. It's not to go too far off.
No, it's just, you know, we're making things more efficient. It has some changes, some outcomes, but they're not related to the actual offering itself.
Well, it's like the deeds in buildings and things like that. It's not, it's just a more efficient way to do the same thing.
Yeah,
right.
So no one's really losing money. You're not taking market share, except for the couple of disintermediated folks when the process gets up and moving. But I think one interesting thing there is, you know, when you mentioned like blockchain going to AI and back. One of the things we've been pretty consistent on is like, look, we build things. Like in our entity, we build things. That's what we enjoy doing. And one of the things that's very hard to do at the moment with the advent of just huge social media is escape hype. Like just being involved in the blockchain space and to much lesser degree the AI space, you learn after a while to step back and kind of ignore a lot of the noise and to keep steady on whatever path you're on. Because you know the guys that are jumping from A to B, you know, we kind of know because we've been through this before, .com and different things. The guys who stay working on stuff and stay building stuff throughout, they typically do well.
So Jean-Luc is asking them to consider this tool set, right, and keep at it, right? They're not really changing so much of the business model. Where do you talk about that without having to go into autoprogressive sharding? I mean, the infrastructure that you're providing.
I mean, I think probably I'm the most humble founder. Like I really don't hype our cryptocurrency. I actually say, you know, you believe what we're doing, you invest. Otherwise, you want. Sometimes I have projects. I want to come and just build a token. I say, just go on Solana. Go build tokens on Solana. There is a utility in everything, but like I said, I don't want to overpromise. I don't want to hype things, and I think our approach has been pretty reasonable so far. Has been working pretty well. We have been really transparent with everybody. We have been showing the work in progress. I have to be honest, I learned this a little bit from Elon Musk, you know, with SpaceX, that he shows all these junks and all these things while they're being built. And I said, you know, while at the very beginning of a project that might be designed, that could be a fake project, you know, they didn't build stuff well at the beginning. In the long run, though, showing the progress becomes the way to really measure the effort behind the project.
And the understanding of what's actually gone into it.
Exactly. So I see and I know I want to see what comes next. And that becomes very interesting. So now the kind of people that we attract are those people that are really curious about how we are changing the industry. And we're working a totally different way than the others are doing. I don't invite people for buying tokens. I
So you mean
invite people to learn.
you're building
Yeah.
first before promoting?
Yeah, and we do this kind of rendezvous here because
Yeah.
I really want anyone, even I always, for me, the ideal is like the student in a dorm. I always keep saying this, which means even someone at the early stage of career start being exposed to the truth that is behind the project, not the ideal things. We need to do things that somehow we need to contribute to change the world, but they have to be reasonably doable. Otherwise, there's no way to they have to be sustainable financially. And the trick, in my opinion, is create opportunities for everybody else. If you create an opportunity for everybody to earn, to build, to succeed, they're going to make you succeed.
So is Cubic building in public in that way to get participation? Is that?
Yeah, but it's interesting stuff there, because I think what kind of stuck out to me is, so what he's talking about really is communication. Like
Sure.
he's communicated very well to his audience, and one of the things we look at when a new entrepreneur comes into us is like, number one, like what's their runway? Like it takes so long to build something now of worth that, like you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So like you got to be able to outlast the hype, and you got to be still building. You got to keep going. So you could come to us with the best idea in the world, and one of the things I look at is, well, how long have you got here?
Right.
And are there guys that are depending on this for a wage, and what happens in 3 months when that's not there, or
Right.
6 months?
Right.
Because equity is great for founders or co-founders until there's kids to feed or mortgages. So like time, number one, the ability to communicate is so important. So one of the reasons we set up a communicate or a consultancy to run that our muni bond project was because we identified from the get-go technology is getting so sub-specialized now that a lot of the tech guys, when they come up for air, they may create a solution, but they don't know what it's a solution to.
Yeah.
And we'd parachute them into financial services or healthcare. They didn't understand the pain points facing that industry to articulate like how it would impact their operational costs or their bottom line revenue. And that's why we created that, because we understood that something has to be able to bridge that gap between that sub-specialized technology and that executive
It's
presence.
more like a reality check.
It's a talent. Like you have to be a line that you kind of just touched on it there, communicating what you're doing, keeping people engaged. And it's something now we check their pulse on at the start. How long you got, and we don't say it like that, but like we get a feeling for it, and watching how they communicate is really important.
Do you apply some of these rules to your community, where you're considering all the different forces around them, and is that I guess the question might be about the incubator concept at Cubic Labs. Do you have a similar environment around your projects?
Oh yes, because first of all, we are online. We communicate by Zoom and WhatsApp, because many people in Africa use WhatsApp. So we are on WhatsApp a lot of times, so that we actually evaluate every day. We have to go through the projects and evaluate how they're doing. It's like kind of checking each other. And then we onboard new projects, which are like through what you call discovery process, discovery calls. And discovery calls for us help us to get new people, new projects who can become partners, even affiliates, partners. Then we discover with each other, and that means that we have to, in these conversations, we are checking very specific things. First of all, the project that you're proposing, have you understood it? What is it going to do? What value does it bring? And how are we going to realize that value in the long term? We keep on asking these fundamental questions so that we stay on the same plane. Yeah.
Do you have a set of priorities for your initiative? I was asking before, and I'm not sure you answered it, which is, are there specific initiatives that you have on your goals? Is it economic development? Is it job creation?
Yes.
What is your ultimate mission?
Economic development. What I have understood about what's called poverty, of people being outside the economy, is that the value of the people that producing every day is not encoded. They don't see it. So we are working with women in communities called African Women in Decentralized Finance, which is part of our project, to educate women about how to use blockchain so they can get paid, or they can also pay for the services among each other. So that is one first initiative that's gaining momentum very, very fast. And so just educating women alone about how to use the blockchain, blockchain wallet, how to transact, paying one another, is very powerful. And of course, now recognize the value of the work of the woman. Like what I say, women, particularly with community health workers, we have got women in the community who are known as health promoters. These health promoters come across women. They go from family to family asking women questions about their health. And if a woman reports to be pregnant, now what we are planning is to see how we can incentivize the pregnancy process itself using tokens. Yes, and when we incentivize that, we also incentivize labor and delivery for delivering the baby at the right place, a nice maternity, and also taking care of the baby for the first year of life. So these are some of the initiatives we are working on, and we think that by empowering women in the village, they're going to have create an economy for themselves, which is now going to uplift them, and of course also make the organization even stronger.
That's fantastic. And your event in Boston in November, the Actuate Boston Summit, right?
Yes, yes.
Are you going to be talking about these kinds of initiatives and trying to get participation in them? Is that specifically why you're coming to Boston in November?
We are specifically coming to Boston for 3 reasons. Boston is the origin of all this. Remember information theory, the mathematical theory of communication was described here at MIT in 1948. That mathematical theory of communication is what gave us all these new information systems like Google, whatever, Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. And we need to celebrate that because it gives us new mathematics that can count what could not be counted, but counts. Like what Albert Einstein said in 1928. Not everything that counts can be counted. After trying, things like love, faith, hope, charity, they're not countable in the traditional finance system. That's why they don't appear anywhere in the balance sheet. But, so that's one thing we have to say. It's called economic power, economic justice. We can now bring things like motherhood into the balance sheet of the new decentralized finance economy. Just like I said, we can capture the value of the work of a mother and using tokens. And then the next thing we are going to talk about, why we are coming to Boston, is what's called distributive justice. Distributive justice means that all these biomedical devices and medicines that we manufacture, particularly say in Massachusetts, they don't find their way outside to Africa, you see.
Yeah.
But I believe that the blockchain itself is the vehicle for distributing those biomedical technologies to even what we call edge computing. Edge compute, where you can have a device that you can put on a cell phone and make a diagnosis for things like high blood pressure, diabetes, in a remote village in Africa. And because it's on the information system, that data is going to appear somewhere that telemedicine is possible.
Right.
There are so many innovators here in Massachusetts and also in California, San Francisco, who have made such edge compute technologies that now we can use for just facial scanning to scan diseases. And now we can actually make, with the health providers in the villages, we now bring all those people into the health system.
I love where that started with distributed justice.
Yeah.
That's just the concept of that. So John, what are you doing at Cubic Labs that represents distributed justice?
I'm not sure I understand.
I guess it's more than quantifiable, right? There's a society benefit. Is that like important to the vibe?
Yeah, we have a bunch of projects around, I mentioned, things that support people financially, projects around the very concept of trust, you know, and ultimately what we try and do is, and look, I'm a pragmatist. Like, I often like to see some of our startups come in with utilizing Web3 to make older projects better. Because I, you know, when I look at innovation or the history of innovation, there's a couple of quantum leaps, but usually what I find is it's like, you know, like, can we make an existing service better and bring it to market? And then beyond that, I look at, you know, and I think this gets lost a lot in translation. We get a lot of students coming to us, let's say fresh out of college, and you know, the idea of entrepreneurship has taken on now this kind of zeitgeist of its own. And they would say, let's say, is there fundraising for us? And I'm like, well, how about you go build something and sell it? Like, we seem to have lost that in general.
Right.
Flip
It's
side
cool,
of that,
but
it's cool. But the flip side of that is that there's probably been so much money printed in the US that the trickle-down effect from a VC perspective as well, as there's been a lot of money for investment, and that has become the what you go and do.
Right,
And
right.
we do have to reorientate sometimes, say, hey, like, first of all, why don't you see build an MVP and sell something, and let's prove out the concept. And then the next thing, say, hey, you have a viable product here. Well, the next thing is, you may love the technology, because particularly they'll come to us, younger demographics, and they love the idea of, like, we're going to do this and that. Well,
freedom to build.
Freedom to build, with the old business functions of sales, marketing, HR, those stuff haven't gone away. Leadership side of it, like, and they want to talk about the technology, but often I'm like, well, have you the ability to create partnerships? You know, what partnerships have you built to date? Because I'm also trying to see, like, can you execute on these things?
Right.
You know, financial upside for retail, for regular folks like us, is something we're very focused on. And then we're kind of waiting for the next big project to come down the line.
Excellent. So speaking of that, Jean-Luc, I'll give you the last word. And this is about Web3. You've talked a lot about, well, we're maybe at Web 2.5, right? We're not really there yet, right? How can you summarize what you're hearing here from this conversation in relation to what you're doing with heading towards Web3? And what is kind of your advice to the marketplace based upon what you're seeing?
Well, that the realities like Cubics, like the foundation, you know, these accelerator programs, they're very important, because I don't want to say it's a really new industry, but I consider this more like a new trend, to be honest, because has been around now for a little. It's just that the consciousness about this is more recent, but it's very important because unfortunately the difficulties for young entrepreneurs. Here it's funny that I always mention the guy in the dorm, the student in the dorm, and he tells me that students go to cubic clubs. You know, they're the same. So it doesn't matter if you change the industry in Web3 at the beginning of your project, you have to face the same problem that any other entrepreneur, even in Web2 are gonna be facing. So having who can offer you a bit of guidance and understanding that from here to here is the same, but then from here going forward is a total mess, because there's still no standardization of a lot of things, especially in communication. I think it was right. The communication is totally different between Web3 and the other industries. It is fundamental. Otherwise, you will really see people going all over the place, and if they are not conscious about what they're doing, some of them will even get in trouble without even knowing that they're getting in trouble.
Right.
There have been a couple of interviews floating around about what of the practices, about some of them where, and in my opinion, they had no idea that what they were doing was illegal. Right. So it's very important, and what the beautiful thing is that they don't offer you only, funding. That is the easy part.
Yeah.
But what is more valuable is that you don't have to pay for the experience and knowledge of all the other subject matter experts that they're going to put next to you. In my opinion, that is way more valuable than the R&D grant, which circular, it's one of the babies of Cubic Labs. We got a small grant from them for the R&D. But what is important that they didn't say goodbye. Today we built our experience, and they say, now that you went through all of this, come back and contribute to help the others. So it becomes a circle. You start spinning the flywheel of the ecosystem in this area.
Did you say circle? Did you say circular?
You know, it's a recurring word for me.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I think that's about it. Thank you so much for digging through a lot of this stuff. This has been really interesting. So we'll see you in November, right? We'll see you at Cubic, and look forward to hearing your use cases. And Gianluca, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you all for taking the journey around the block. And we'll see you next time. I'm David Cutler. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.